millennial generation starting to give up because they can't afford to get a good job or own a house.
8 million Venezuelans voting for this assembly, saying it's actually less than 3.
It is. And people are going to start rioting in the streets.
Was reported to have asked Putin for military support that would help him stay in power.
We will make America safe again. And yes, together, we will make America great again.
And they ignore him. And 8 more years goes by till Bernie himself finally admits to his sons, hey, I've been running a Ponzi scheme.
Does its dominance mean it can use the alliance for its own ends?
Since 1981, bond yields, also known as coupon rates, have just gone down and down and down.
Federal Reserve note will be your biggest financial liability. RTD Live Talk. Looks like we're officially streaming. Sorry for the false calls or the pump fakes. A minute ago, not sure what was happening. I was in the midst of talking, and all of a sudden, I got some type of thing flash across my screen saying you're no longer connected. So, not sure what's up with that. But as of now, we're live, and as always, looking to find out your thoughts from earlier video in regards to the recession indicators and how we have 2 different sources of financial experts / institutions coming out saying that these 2 pieces of data here have shown throughout the last 30 years that when the employment numbers drop and then all of a sudden there's a sudden increase, then shortly thereafter something happens. And then another one had to do with the idea that the credit spread on some government or some debt or whatnot, whenever it reached 2%, there was always something to follow that. So it's more and more people talking about the recession is here or it's coming or whatever. And so I love to get responses from comments about people really are very opinionated in the fact that we are currently in a recession. And so the reason I typically don't really get out here and be the first one or the only one to say we're in a recession with, with quotations as if it's a fact, is because the stock market and all the typical things that are true indicators as far as the people being pissed and in the streets or mad that the markets are reflecting it, is the reason why I'm not one of the ones to say that the recession is here, even though the indicators all line up. I believe that we are not in a full recovery, obviously, because there's so many people, i.e. central banks as well as our president and all this stuff happening, trying to basically keep the confidence in the public, because if more and more people begin preaching recession or market downturn or the economy slowing down, then it'd be hard to keep that artificial stock market inflated the way that it is. So other than that, so if we have any new viewers, give it a couple seconds before I begin chit-chatting and find out what's going on in your world. And as always, if there's anything happening worthy of mentioning, feel free to let me know what that is, because I'm always interested in finding out about local news that may not have made the mainstream. So other than that, I got a couple people who are prof. We got Pat, Bunny, Money. And so it says, there's no question we have never left the 2008 recession. Not a single statistic coming from this government is real. Very true. And what's interesting is that just in the last 2 weeks or so, to my knowledge, there's been 2 actions that from the Federal Reserve Bank, which have shown that they are obviously concerned about something, because not only in mid-June, as I reported from that article earlier, that they decided to come up with their own way of measuring statistics beyond just the inversion of the yield curve, and they have their own little methodology now that they think is probably a little bit more precise and accurate, as if like the prior data was not sufficient enough. But then you have this, I think just last week, the balance sheet of the Federal Reserve, their public information that was public prior to of them letting us know how much their balance sheet actually is at this current point and how much they're looking to tighten off or erase off their books. They're discontinuing that. So seems kind of odd that you would discontinue something unless you were trying to keep some things secretive, i.e. the idea that perhaps they're not going to be able to reduce their balance sheet as they have been preaching all along. So we will see, but it's kind of suspicious that they would discontinue the public listing of their balance sheet at this current point, especially when the world is all looking towards them and this whole quantitative tightening that they're looking to perform. Alaska Prepper, how you doing, my friend? Home Rocks, it says Fed target already over 2%, just waiting for the curves to invert. Yeah, and that's yeah. So what's really interesting is the fact that over the last 4 or 5 years, especially, that I've been really trying to pay attention to this sport stuff more specifically, it's been the fact that there was always 2 or 3 things that the Federal Reserve was sticking to. Back when unemployment was 6, 5, 6, whatever it was like, we still have more wiggle room. We can get the unemployment lower. So now it's at 3.8, borderline 4, or whatever it is now. And so it's at an all-time low, which hasn't been seen since I read the 1960s or something like that. So they've achieved that. And then the inflation target of 2% forever for the last umpteen years. On average, it was 1 point something, 1.5, 1 point whatever. But they couldn't actually achieve that. But now we've reached 2, whether it fluctuate there according to their measurements, we've reached 2. And then there was one other little measurement that they were using as a gauge to their need to tighten at a slow rate. So we've actually reached all those measurements, but yet, now it seems like they're tightening because they are in a rush to prepare for what is coming. And that's makes them look really, really desperate, in my opinion. It says, let me see, the people who will not wake up because I think I missed something. It's coming. So anybody buying freeze-dried foods just in case? Nope, I have not. More of a canned goods person, but that is something I should definitely look into because I have not. I'm aware of the dry foods, but haven't really looked into it myself. Any recommendations on places where you can get quality and quantity for a relatively cheaper price? I would love to find that out. Let me know that in the chat. It says, people will not wake up because I think they may be putting lithium in the chemtrail. Lithium is a drug. We know for sure that NASA has been caught deploying it on the East Coast. Really? Pat, never knew anything about that. Lithium is in the chemtrails. Yeah, that whole chemtrail stuff, man. It's very interesting. Very interesting how they have, just this stuff that just doesn't really make sense apart from the fact, like, why would you, pollute the air in that manner, blocking the sun, altering the weather, all the things that, people say is, conspiracy theory, but yet chemtrails, you see those artificial microfibers in the air that's just hanging there forever. Yeah, it looks very, very bad. It says China has a bigger bank than the U.S. Rayon, bigger bank in regards to their reserves. Their savings in gold is a lot bigger than ours, I believe, even though they have yet to announce their official holdings. I believe they're sitting on something mighty heavy, and a lot of commentators have thrown out figures such as 15, 20,000 tons, and supposedly we have 8.3 or 8 point whatever last time it was audited, when it was audited, if that ever happened. So yeah, who knows for sure, but China's definitely sitting on something heavy. It says, Prof. Grammy says, Mike, do you think the next correction will be hard? Will it be a hard crash or death by 1,000 cuts? Oh, man, very good question. And to be honest with you, I think that the global monetary system now is probably experiencing that death by 1,000 cuts, which will then lead to this correction because all central banks around the world right now are scrambling. And so we have, the central bank tightening, and we have all the other central banks that are probably, especially in the emerging markets, they're scrambling, trying to raise funds to prop up their currencies, and they're running low on Federal Reserve notes. Then we have the EU, which talks about dialing back on their asset purchasing programs, but they're still doing QE. Japan's doing QE. So all the developed world governments are heavily indebted, and the central banks are responding to that. So it seems like it's already a death by 1,000 cuts because all these cuts are adding up, which will equal the correction, which will then result in a hard crash. So that's kind of how I will put it. If I could give it a time order, we're experiencing fluctuations in all types of, markets and whatnot. Governments are heavily indebted. Central banks are responding. And who suffers at the very end? The holders of fiat currencies. And so what's really interesting is the fact that one of the articles I reported on earlier talks about what J.P. Morgan mentioned, what currencies are worth holding in case we do come across a recession. And so they had the words if and is all tied up in the same sentence or story, which lets me know that, clearly they're aware, they're more than aware of what's coming. And it's just interesting how they give little hints and little clues as to what people should do. I'm not sure if that's like to help those people feel better at the fact they're warning people, or, at the end of the day, perhaps they are really not all that bright. I don't know. But I imagine they have to know something's coming, especially J.P. Morgan, because, as I mentioned earlier, they're holding the most silver in this country right now. So that's telling a lot. It says we have hyperinflation soon? I don't think hyperinflation will be soon. I think, like in all fiat currencies that have, every fiat currency, and somebody let me know if I'm wrong, but every fiat currency that has reached its expiration date resulted in government being heavily indebted, entitlement spending, social programs getting too large, war, or some type of financial hiccup that needed to be propped up by excess debt. The government borrowed and they inflated the currency away. And that's kind of what's happening now with what we're experiencing. So because we're the reserve currency and we're in a more of a digital age, I think we won't experience true hyperinflation paper-wise for a while. But yet they can keep switching digits, debit and credit digits anywhere they want. And until those digits, and it's more so when they're monetized into actual physical paper, will we truly see hyperinflation, because hyperinflation has always been paper-based. Whether it be what's happening in Venezuela, where they're flooding the economy with paper. What happened in Zimbabwe is there's too much paper. And then what happened with prior inflations in other countries that most people don't really know about is because there's just too much paper running around. So the digits will come first, and then they're going to monetize that to put paper in people's hands. That's when we could see hyperinflation, in my opinion. It says lithium is for bipolar. It says normalcy bias and the Stockholm syndrome is much more powerful than any chemicals being used to dumb down. I feel that in general, people don't want to wake up, but in the back of their minds, they know. Yeah, and it's unfortunate that if in the back of your mind you know something's not right, but yet you still choose to ignore it. That right there is not, to me, to be frank, that's just stupid. Like, something's wrong, you see it, you probably feel it, but to not stand up and to speak about it or to comment on it, you're setting yourself up for failure there. It says, what do you say to the Cayman Islands bank account? Rayon Hopkins. Good question, my friend. Not familiar with it. I know that it's always been some type of escape route for a lot of people who have means to do such, but I would imagine, that all the people that has accounts in the Caymans, at the end of the day, I don't know what currency they may be denominated in, but yet it's good to say that I'm not sure, but I'm not sure if they let you store your metals in the Caymans, and then if they are there, how would you get to them if you needed them? So, I think the dollar or the Federal Reserve note will be the last currency standing, because it's just natural. It's a natural response for all countries and citizens in other countries to run towards the dollar. And so a lot of people are still going to hold dollars when their currencies crumble, which will give our currency a little bit more value. So the dollar will be the last thing standing. But it also will come to an end, because every fiat currency does. It says J.P. Morgan knows, because they helped create this mess as agents of the worldwide Federal Reserve System. Pat, I do agree. So people also don't realize or really take to heart the fact that a lot of the top banks, or the banks labeled too big to fail, those banks, I'm not sure the exact number, there's about 9 or 10 on the list now, but the ones that's been around the longest are JP Morgan and Chase, which merged or whatever. Then we have like Citigroup, which changed its name, and then we have Bank of America, which went through some change. So a lot of banks changed their names or altered just a little bit, but those banks have been around since the inception of the Federal Reserve, and they are the shareholders in the Federal Reserve System in their local regions. So all 12 reserve banks that are scattered throughout this country have shareholders, and those shareholders receive dividends per year or however it's worked out. So they're heavily invested in the sustainability of the Federal Reserve System. So it's good to say no matter what. That's why the bail-in happened, or the bailouts happened with the banking sector in 08, 09, was because, you know, the Federal Reserve had to protect their best, the institutions that they operate in the best interest of the institutions in which they are shareholders of. So it's good to say that come next, hiccup, they're going to definitely take care of those banks as well, i.e. with your deposits on the bail-in side, in my opinion. Yes, Texas rally, it is 6%. I knew that, but I didn't want to throw it out there because I wasn't quite sure. And also, I have a book that one day I'll probably make an article or post a picture, but it gives you the actual breakdown of the original banks that were a part of the Federal Reserve System back in 1913, 1914. And you can see that some of the names are still similar, even though a lot of banks have gone out of business and been bought and merged or whatever. But it gives you a good idea of the actual shareholders of the Federal Reserve System, which they no longer make public. They don't make that public because most people don't even bother to ask. But the most recent one that I think was published that I have a copy of from a book was in 1980, I believe. So that's 38 years of which, those banks, they haven't gone away. They've gotten bigger since then. So, yep, okay, good point there. Hey, Steve, how you doing, my friend? Alaska Prep says, Home Rocks, you can purchase 50 pounds of rice and 25 pounds of beans for about $35. If you store in a Mylar bag with an oxygen absorber, it will last 30 years as long as you store it in a cool place. Alaska Prepper, that's some good information there. So, let me get your thoughts on some of those indicators. I'm curious to find out what other indicators are out there beyond, of course, the yield curve and beyond the two that I mentioned earlier from that report I did. Are there any other indicators out there that you may be familiar with, or I might have mentioned, or may have slipped my mind? Feel free to share that in the chat, because I wouldn't mind compiling an entire list of what has been labeled as financial indicators that kind of predicts or have shown that when ABC happens, the result of that is a crisis, i.e. market slowdown or recession. So I would love to find that information out. So I have a question from D. It says, question, all of the value lost in a crash, where did that money go? Money never disappears, it transfers, but transfers to whom? Very good question. So basically what I've gathered, all that value is transferred to typically tangible assets, goods and services. So if you look at the fact that fiat currencies are just IOUs or receipts for actual tangible goods and services, the only true value, the things that remain valuable, are the things that are constant, which are things that we actually use and need. So for example, if this microphone that I'm talking on was rare, precious, had all the qualities of being a good storage of value, and there was only, say, 1,000 microphones of this kind, this could be considered an antique. And this antique here would have value to somebody because its rarity and all the other properties that's in it. So this mic, if it was $1,000 during some type of crisis or crash, this mic has value still, either through or beyond the crisis, to where it would probably be worth a lot more than $1,000. So somebody would probably buy it from me just because they perceive the idea that it's going to retain value throughout time. So all the liquidity that can be pumped in, created by the banks and all the governments to prop up the financial systems, all that liquidity, all of those digits just goes into it. It equates to what it would take for people to acquire this particular metal here. So for example, like they say in Weimar Republic, that at the end of the day, 1 ounce of gold was worth in paper terms, because every single asset, tangible asset, will always be accounted for in digits or paper at the end of the day. And so that's how we gauge the value of it and how much it's worth in exchange from back and forth. So at the end of the day, an ounce of gold in the Weimar Republic in Germany back in the day during their hyperinflationary time period was reported as being able to purchase houses, a block, a factory, or something of that nature. And it wasn't that the factory or the house or whatever it was that people were acquiring weren't worth anything. It's just that the paper had no purchasing power to it because it was inflated away. But all of that nominal worth was absorbed into a single gold coin, to where that gold coin during normal times was worth You know, at the time when it was when a 1 gold coin, when their currency was backed by gold, that gold was probably 2 francs, two German marks. 2 German marks or 3 German marks to 1 type of ratio. But when they printed all that damn paper, all that paper was absorbed into that metal to where that metal was worth 1 trillion marks. So that the real estate property or whatever was still worth something nominally. It so happened that with that coin, you could purchase and block for 50 million marks or whatever it might have been. You know what I'm saying? And have some change left over. So that's kind of how the whole the value is just exchanged from one thing to another, because paper, digits, and all that stuff that we're using amongst each other is just a middleman. It has no value other than perceived value and faith and the faith and credit of your government. So as of now, the Federal Reserve note is the strongest and the last thing standing, because it's been the reserve currency, and the world and citizens around the world view it as a unit of value still, but you know, because their currencies are crap. So a good thing to be mindful of is the fact that if your national currency is depreciating rapidly because of whatever the government's doing and the central bank can't do, and you are getting away from your own paper, at the end of the day, don't you think that eventually the Federal Reserve note gonna have that same issue? Even though you've yet to experience it on a global scale, but it's coming. It's no way around it. So that's a little educational piece on, you know, where value is just transferred to. So that's why people out here buy. That's why people with resources buy like rare Corvettes. You know, because that Corvette on the other side, someone's going to want to set that in their museum or in their house as a collector's piece. So it's going to be worth some type of paper, whether it be the current issuance of paper or the new currency that usually issued after the fact. So my 2 cents there. So I missed a couple questions here. It says a good investment, technology. What we have here? We really have to think. This is way now. The Federal Reserve Bank around the world are puppets of the oligarch families that claim their wealth comes from Roman times. Wow, Pat, that's a good one there. Oligarch families, very true. I mean, it would be, you know, in a very ideal way. It'd be great to be able to truly get to the grassroots of those families that own currencies, own central banks, that have control of our money supply, which ultimately influences the government and the population. So yeah, it would be great to find out who those people are actually, and have them called out on the carpet and exposed for their evilness. Yeah, whatever. Federal Reserve banks around the world are puppets. Yep, see, for war, technology. It says, hey, Mike, remember that employment is always a lagging indicator. SMEs prefer to hold on to their people for as long as possible, typically until orders have already tanked. Yeah, very true. And one thing that is a good indicator that I'm just been exposed to or experiencing hands-on is how companies are in the business of making a profit because they have shareholders or whatever, depending on whatever. They have overhead. They got to stay in business. So as the economy tightens, especially this trade war, I mean, I've read a couple articles about how in those small towns that are geared towards creating or manufacture items that they export, they're having problems. So they're laying off, and they're, as the person mentioned here, it's not, everything is put on hold as far as layoffs are concerned. They cut back hours first, and they might eliminate a shift, or they might close a department and put two groups together. And so they always start internally, companies, before they begin saying we got to lay off, in hopes of things turning around or whatnot. And so there's a lot of people, a lot of companies, from what I'm hearing, and also just witnessed this with an organization I'm part of. One thing they did was they laid off the direct employees in preference of having contractors to cut back costs on medical care and all the expenditures that come with having direct employees. So a lot of companies are going straight to contractors because you can cut some of your overhead costs that way by paying people contract-wise, 1099s and whatnot. So that's another indicator that things are slowing down because more and more companies are utilizing contract services. Like the recruitment industry right now is booming. It's been booming for years during this expansion because of Obamacare and things like that. It's just becoming costlier to maintain a high level of employees, so you let a lot of people go or outsource it. It says, my neighbor mows lawns on the side. I have not seen him load the mower on the trailer, but once in 2 weeks. He is normally gone, even an indicator. Yeah, so a lot of people ain't cutting the grass, so they're cutting back. Says, silver worth owning? Faith Hunter. Very good question. Is silver worth owning? Silver is money. And so here's a good way of looking at sound money and being monetarily aware, in my opinion, is that if you take the mind frame that based upon history, and so people throw out different dates, you know, AD, BC, whatever, silver and gold has been money throughout history. As well, something, you know, we had copper coins as well, whatever. But it's been a monetary metal. And so I never exclude palladium and platinum, but they've not been monetary metals. But gold and silver, I have the mindset that it's money. Everything else is a receipt or a claim to it. So I personally would say the silver is probably one of the most important of the metals because it's actually used and it's needed to do everything we're doing now. Like I'm talking to you on a computer with a microphone and all that, and it has silver in it, with a little bit of gold, probably more so, but more silver than anything else. You remove that silver, you change the chemical composition of these electronics here. We don't do a lot of things we do. So just factor that in of itself, it makes it very useful and valuable. Then you add the idea that it is something that has all the components of being a storage of value, as well as just have the money properties to where it is worth definitely having, in my opinion. And then because it's retained its value throughout history in regards to being able to purchase equivalently the same items as you could with your paper, the whole Gretchen's Law aspect is that once, good money drives out bad money. And especially after 1965, when they removed silver from our coins, people who were aware held on to those pre-65 coins or whatnot because they retained value. And if you were around at that time, and you had a 64, 63 quarter, and you kept that same quarter right now is probably worth $4 or $5, and it still says a quarter on it. So it's like, you know, it says a quarter, but it's worth because of the chemical composition, $3, $4, $5, whatever it might be, because of the weight of silver in it. So, long story short, silver is very important. Alaska Prep right now, with good credit, you can borrow money at lesser interest than inflation. Inflation is 2.8, auto loan for 3 years. For 3 years, costs 2.5. Yeah, it's a damn shame. To be when a bank lends at a less than inflation, they are desperate to create new money. Yeah, that's a very good point there. Very good point. Let me see. Indicator. Okay, we got an indicator here. Who's that? I missed that. Indicator. Today, Kitco News interviewed 2 traders. One said gold is going to 1,300 in 30 to 60 days. One said we are going down. Yeah, indicate that they don't know. Indicating that, yeah, and here, you know, let me know if I'm wrong. I could be wrong. But given trends and just glancing back over history to see where we're at now, if I was employed as a financial advisor or a technical analyst or somebody of that nature who was, you know, out here as a mainstream pundit talking, giving my opinion on the economy, at some point, just because of my conscience, I could be, you know, it just could be me, but if I know better and telling people that, you know, gold's going to go up in 30 days, gold's going to go down in 30 days, the hell with whether it goes up or down. The question is, do you have any? You know what I'm saying? I would be more concerned with explaining to people why it's important to have it in their possession than to tell them about the price going up or down. Because think about this. This is what really trips me out. Look at your age, however old you are, and just use that as a time reference as to how valuable that those metals have appreciated in nominal terms over the last course of your life. So if you're 20, 30, 40, just use a younger person in college, just graduated from college, coming across this message and understanding something's wrong in our financial system, and realize that when they were a child, i.e., say, you know, 1920? No. What's the year? 2018. Wow. When they were, say, in the year 2000, they would have been, you know, they're 18 now or whatever. Say 1998. Okay, whatever. The price of gold 1998 was, or 2000, was $250 an ounce. Gold or silver was $4 an ounce. And so my thought would be, people out here saying that the price can go up, go down, whatever. It will never, quote me on this, it will never go to zero. So it doesn't matter what is quoted at now according to all these sources. The fact that an ounce of gold, which was in supply, in circulation, less, 100 years ago especially, and was used to trade amongst people, and it was the equivalent of, you had different measurements of cold coins. You had a $5 gold coin, which was for 5 pieces of paper. You get a single 5 gold. I forgot whatever the name is called, St. Augustine or whatever it is called, for $5. And now it takes 1,300 pieces of paper, or roughly, to get an ounce of gold. 1,300 pieces of paper. And then 20 years ago, it was 450 pieces of paper. So just look at that trend. Oh, let me see. It was 5 pieces of paper in 1930, whatever, and 40, 50, whatever, if you could get a hold on it. And also because gold was illegal to own as a savings device for 40 years. Duh. If you knew that. But if you didn't know that, of course. But then just to look at the trend. Okay, 5 pieces of paper is in 1930. In 1971, it was, what was it? I can't think. I know silver was almost $50 or $30, 30 pieces of paper. In 2000, it was 400 pieces of paper, 1,300 pieces of paper this year. What do you think it might be in, say, 10 years from now? How many pieces of paper would be the question I would ask myself. And being that, they're going to continue to print paper in digits, and you think that price is going to stay the same for long in paper terms? Yeah, I'm gonna leave that as is. I could be wrong, but somebody let me know. I'm not opposed to being told I'm wrong. Anyway, no one's called in. My phone line is open. Want to talk to somebody? Take care of yourself. Doctors are a pill pushes. Blockchains and robotics will be future workforce. Yep, contracting can be considered a variable cost, whereas a structured employee is a fixed cost. 7 billion people in 120 years since 1900. Yeah, that's a lot of people. Silver is most important in the drug and medical industry. Yep, I wouldn't doubt that. And that's the thing. There's so many uses for silver that, a lot of people are not even aware of. Like, I follow a lot of people who are into like technology, and more so inventors that, are really focused on future technologies. And they're saying that the way silver can be thinned out and used for, and the things that it can produce with silver, man, it just amazes me as like how valuable that is for technology that's coming or already in the mix that we don't know about yet, but it needs silver. So it's definitely going to be needed. Says Jesse James says Harry Dent thinks gold is going to 700. And here's okay. So once again, Jesse, just to my point, like if it goes to 700, 500, 1,000. If you are the believer that it is money and everything else in this world, as far as manufactured goods or fiat currencies, are all receipts or claims to metals in that regards, if it went to 700 in what's considered this normal environment now, I would be happy as hell. I would love to see $700 silver or gold. I'm sorry. I hope Harry Dent is right. I mean, that's deflationary as heck, which central bankers can't have. So it's in their best interest that it doesn't go to 700, in my opinion. But I would be the equivalent of a kid on Christmas waking up and like, yeah. Anyway, anybody buy Litecoin today? Jesse James, no Litecoin today. Speaking of cryptocurrencies, someone reached out to me today in the crypto space and want to chit chat a little bit, so I might open up the mic and have a viewer, someone join me for RTD Live Talk, and we talk a little crypto, because despite what your opinions or thoughts might be, definitely it was introduced for this time and space, but the opportunities of getting involved now from either a technology standpoint or as having a portion of it so that it can be one of those things that absorbs some of this liquidity that will be coming soon wouldn't be a bad idea, because if you have items that are able to go up in nominal price, you can then, it'll be easier to take care of all your expenditures, you pay your taxes, all that stuff like that, but then you'll have a lot more left over as opposed to holding some paper to be able to do some good with that, I believe. So that's what interests me in those type of things. Pat says, to be successful financial advisor today, all you need to do is be passionate and sell, sell, sell. Never mind reality. Just sell your idea. So sad. Yeah, and on top of that, all you have to do, in my opinion, is to become a certified with all those same tests that have been created by the institutions to get you to keep your money in the system. This whole system is ran on the fact that the mainstream narrative of go to school, get good grades, get a job, save for your retirement, retire, live, whatever, and that whole little narrative that's been mainstream in the developed world has monetary policy has already changed that, but financial advisors don't really alter that. So they basically are all about making their commission, in my opinion. Because if they were to tell you to hold some of your metals or whatnot, or hold some of your money in metals, they would probably be fired. Hello, caller. What's your name? What's your name? Where you calling from?
Sparks, Nevada. I'm calling from. My name is Andor Coble.
Nice to be. How you doing, Andor?
Very good. Enjoying your show. Question I asked to ask is, since we have this digital currency now, everything's done by digits most of the time. And I've heard that a lot of foreign countries, they have a lot of our debt. Like someone said, about $15 trillion that they could come back over here to the United States. I was wondering how that would work, and I don't know if you know, with the digital system to cause the hyperinflation. I'm kind of curious on that.
Okay, so let me get that. I think I heard two questions there. All the governments holding our debt outside this country, if it comes back, what happened to it? Was one question. Correct?
Yeah, it's digital. It's all digitalized, I'm assuming. It's not like paper money that people have, like we're doing everything with your card and stuff.
Right.
So I assume other countries have that.
Right.
And if they wanted to dump our money, say if China wanted to dump our dollars, they dump digits, I guess, and they come back here. But how do they affect the cause hyperinflation? Paper, like you said, a lot of paper came around, and people could get too much paper, and that would cause everything to go up. But now we're doing a digital type money.
Right. Okay.
I don't know if you know that or not.
All right. Very good point there. We can talk this out because I'm trying to put all that together in my head as I hear you speak it. But one thing that stood out from that question there was what would happen and how would all that stuff coming back really cause a hyperinflation. And so one of the things most noting is the fact that when it comes to just the paper currency, the Federal Reserve notes that are in circulation already, there's more notes in existence that are already outside of our country that have been used to for reserves in central banks around the world, because a lot of central banks, because everybody's dependent upon everyone's currencies, the strength is dependent upon its exchangeable value to a dollar. So as IE was had in Argentina, they had to borrow $50 billion to sell back into the market to buy their own currency to make it strong. So there are actual paper notes in reserves of central banks, because also think about this, in other countries, citizens also, if their economy is not crumbling, they have the right to then go to their local banks or money exchanges and buy Federal Reserve notes as well. So a lot of people, I know especially in Argentina, a lot of people, there was reports done about how over the last umpteen years, because of all the crises they've had there, whenever they have family or friends visit America, whatever, they always come back and load up on Federal Reserve notes, because they have Federal Reserve notes packed in walls. They got so many Federal Reserve notes that have been hidden as a store of value, because they know that over the last 10 years, every 10 years, their currency crumbles. So they themselves acquire Federal Reserve notes. So there's no telling how many Federal Reserve notes are in Argentina alone. Nevertheless, Venezuela, especially Zimbabwe. If you Google dollars or whatnot in Zimbabwe, they'll show you they have a scarce supply of Federal Reserve notes, because people are storing them at like gold, and the ones circulating are so beat up and to where they're faded. Like there's Federal Reserve notes that are faded because that thing's been passed around so many times. So say all that to basically mention that there are a lot of notes in the hands of a lot of citizens as their form of gold and silver because they either can't get it or they don't know the value in having it. So they rather hold dollars because they always retain value in regards to their own currency. So that's just the public. So that in itself is more than enough to come back here somehow, some way, and cause problems. Then we have the reserve banks, the central banks that are responsible for having reserves, whether it be in treasuries or bonds or whatnot. And they, I believe some of that could be liquid in paper form because they have to then redeem some of that with their own population, but as well as have the digit side to be able to transfer back and forth through our Federal Reserve System, the SWIFT system, and stuff like that. So whether it be digits or paper, there's more than enough paper in existence already to cause problems.
Wow. Well, I didn't know that. I always thought it was like $1.5 trillion of paper only, and the rest was digital. I didn't
so watch
other
this.
countries
So,
had that. All these...
so with that, if it's $1.5 trillion, because I don't remember the exact amount offhand of how many notes that we know of that are in existence. But here in this country here, there's probably only, I don't know what it is. If you check the Federal Reserve balance sheet or what the reserve depository, they may only have 300, 400 billion on deck to be able to service us. And so that remaining balance could easily be in foreign countries in Europe and Latin America. Think about the second, third world countries that are struggling. Their savior has been dollars forever because for whatever reason, they can't get gold and silver as easy as we do. So there's a lot of dollars stashed out there that, eventually if people start losing confidence in them, they go try to spend them. And then their government if they take it back to their government to exchange or to get their own currency or to get something good services, their government's going to send that stuff back here. So they don't want to be stuck with those things if it goes belly up like their own national currencies are. So that's my 2 cents on that. But as far as a technical analyst standpoint of being a financial economist, I don't know the intricate details of it, but I know from a paper standpoint, there's more than enough paper to cause problems.
I'll be darned. I didn't know that. Yeah, it's very interesting. But the question is that it's when the things get bad, you were like what's happened in Haiti, where the gas prices went up and people are just going bazonkers. I don't know how you can control something like that. People in America just don't realize how good we have it here.
Oh man,
we don't have the problems in some of these other third world countries. I've traveled myself, and I just don't realize, everything that we take it all for granted. We live so good, and other places struggle for things. And people don't realize that here. They don't realize that unless they went abroad, like yourself or myself. I've been around and seen other countries like Kia. I've been into Ukraine and all that. Yeah. And how they live and what they have. They don't even own cars.
Yeah. Yeah. So we are beyond blessed here, man. And I think if people, and it's going to, unfortunately, it's going to take some type of wake up call in the form of some catastrophic event that cause people to really appreciate it, because like it's human nature that you never appreciate what you have until it's gone, and that's unfortunate.
That's true.
Very unfortunate.
That's definitely true. I mean, even to buy gold and silver here, people can buy gold and silver here. There's a lot of countries you can't do that.
Yeah.
You can't buy it. Not in this world, they can't get it.
Yeah.
And we can go to down almost any city, someplace has a coin shop.
Yeah.
You can purchase that.
And here's another indicator to let you know how precious and how important it is. I know, especially in the city of Detroit and suburbs, pretty much on every corner in some major intersection somewhere, there's a place that says, "We buy gold." And they actually have people during the day.
I see it all over here.
They have people with signs. They have little kids with signs. "We buy gold. We'll give you a good rate." I went into one day because they had silver too. And I went in trying to see what their rates were because I was looking to purchase some, and the guy's like, "Sorry, we don't sell. We just buy." I'm thinking like, I'm like, you know something. I'm like, you know something. That's why you here. That's why you got this shop, and that's why you only buying, but you're not selling. Yeah. So clearly, what they're giving people, they're getting over. And so people who do that, you're losing out, my friend. Don't go to that place. Do not go to those places like that.
No,
in my
that's
opinion.
True. 10 years ago, I could look on Craigslist. Not that I shop there a lot or anything, and I was just looking, and you could buy gold and silver. People were selling it 10 years ago. It was on for sale there. Now, if you go on Craigslist, almost any city, any county, any state, it's all buy. We just buy. We buy. Nothing's. There's once in a while you see one ad for sale. I mean, some of the big populated areas like L.A. and all that, it's all just buy. Yeah. Nothing's selling, just buying. That's how it's changing now.
And I would be very, very leery of buying anything
I agree.
from anyone that's not a trusted, reputable dealer, because now with technology, they got so many fakes out here that looks damn near good as a real one. And so apart from having a few different ways of determining on your own, you can get gypped easily. So if it sounds too good to be true, you better stay away from it. So, but Endor, thank you for calling, my friend.
No, I don't buy from Craigslist. I did one time sell silver. I met a guy. I took some of my silver a long time ago.
Yeah.
And I met him at a credit union. He gave me money, and I gave him the silver. I did one time through Craigslist one time, but that was a long time ago.
Yeah.
But I haven't. But I just kind of watched it when I first started getting. Since the last crash, I started buying silver and gold. I've been always pretty much that. I don't pay attention to prices. A lot of people do.
Yeah.
Because it fluctuates all the time. It's just the fact that I just don't see how, with the system we have, something's going to happen.
Yeah.
And I don't have any faith in it. It's just holding together by faith. And if one of these days it's not gonna, and then it's over. Then it's all over. Right now everyone's keeping the sod going. I listen to Greg Manarino every day, and it's like how they prop up the stock market all the time. Always buying bonds, Watch the bond market, Someone comes in there and buys billions of dollars worth of bonds to keep the stock market going. They're able to keep it rallying. It's been 70 times, 75 times it's rallied. Nothing in history has done this.
Yeah.
Nothing.
Yeah, and the question is how much longer. And I believe because we're in a digital age that can be easily manipulated with just the keyboard, I believe they can probably try to keep this thing going for much longer. And apart from the pain that's going to come from this correction slash reset, whatever, it's going to be very uncomfortable the longer this thing lasts. But for those that are aware, it's a great opportunity to take advantage of, the preparing for what will be a life-altering experience that we've never known in this day and age. So, but I have another call. So, Endor, thank you for calling, my friend. Appreciate your support.
No problem. Anytime. I enjoy your show. Keep up the good. You have a nice day.
Thank you.
Bye.
Very interesting. Very interesting. Very interesting. Hello, caller. What's your name? Where you calling from?
Calling in. Called you real quick.
I'm sorry, Keith.
I'm originally from Detroit. I live in Texas.
Okay, say that one more time. I didn't get your name. I was having some problems. What's your name? Where you calling from now?
Texas Rattler.
Texas, okay.
From Texas.
Okay.
Native Detroiter.
Native Detroiter. Okay, from the D. Okay, what's up, friend? How you doing tonight? What's on your mind?
I'm all right, man. I know a lot about this. And some of the questions you're getting, like the money coming back. Well, what you're seeing right now is the bond market, the bonds are being dumped globally. There's only one buyer. That's the Federal Reserve. If you watch the market on a regular, the bonds are being dumped. And the only natural buyer, because China's not buying, Russia's not buying, they've announced they're not buying. Right. India, our allies. So that excess currency that resides outside the U.S. will return because people won't use it.
Right.
You're right, it's the last dollar to go. But it's the simple way to explain this is if the government cut every American a check for $5 million tonight, would a loaf of bread still be $2 tomorrow?
Of course not.
No.
Good point.
Same scenario.
Yeah.
But we haven't got no money. And I tell people this all the time. You leave enough money in the bank to pay your bills, but take the majority of currency out. Here's the problem. 1.4, I think it's around 1.5 trillion. But you can go to the Federal Reserve site, and it shows the M1 money supply. Actual cash, coins. That's all that exists. Our banks are reporting 20 trillion in digital deposits. So the problem is going to be when we face that final day of financial collapse run on banks. Only the first people that make it going to get there and get actual cash because it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
It's all digital.
Yeah.
And I like the crypto because I understand the concept. We want to get away from the banks. That we want to be free. We don't want to be slaves anymore. That's global. But the problem with that is you're still converting crypto into physical cash. So you're going to have to use the banks.
Yeah.
And we've seen different banks turn the spigot off. They won't let you transfer in or get your money out.
Right.
That's going to be a major issue until another system is developed to where we can bypass that.
Right.
As far as the collapse, Trump and the bankers are at war. It's who can get it done the fastest and who can blame who. If he can get it done before they do it, then no one's going to trust them when they come up with the new system.
Yeah.
Because if we give the ball back to them again, they're just going to revamp a new system that's another similar to fiat, except I believe this new system is going to be completely digital to where if they want to raise your taxes, they want to fine you, they don't like your beliefs, they can turn you off.
Yeah.
That's the danger with the crypto system.
Yeah.
You know, so we're facing a lot of issues. I tell people the reason you still can get coinage, gold and silver coins through the mint or through the pawn shop is because the ignorance of most Americans. Buy it while you can, because there's going to come a time very shortly, and it can happen tomorrow, that you won't be able to buy it, and the people who have it will not sell it.
Yeah.
So get it while you can. I collect old money, and I find it very intriguing that on all my old money, I have one silver certificate from 1889. It's over 100 years old. It's in a glass airtight case.
Yeah.
It doesn't say Federal Reserve note on it. It says national currency or U.S. currency, redeemable in gold upon demand from any bank or financial institution.
Yeah.
All it used to be was an IOU.
Yeah.
So if you came in town and you wanted to party, then you took your gold to the bank. They gave you dollar bills. When you went to go back to work, you gave them back the IOU, the dollar bills, and they gave you back your gold and your silver.
Right.
Nixon took us off that in 71. America's a totally faithless. It's only because we trusted system, and the world sees that it's a Ponzi scheme, and they're running from it. That's why you see China, Russia, India, other small nations, our allies, buying as much gold as they can get their hand on. If you're rich and you try to buy a kilo bar, let's say you want to buy $100,000 worth of gold tonight, the broker's going to tell you either you're going to be put on a waiting list or there's nothing they can do for you. And I'm also seeing that in the eBay, the mint market, a tenth of an ounce is now going for over $200. And the first time I lost a bid, I'm like, I'm not paying over $150 for this coin. I know what it's valued at.
Yeah.
And I scratched my head like, this guy actually paid $250. This is just a regular tenth of an ounce.
Yeah.
Then it dawned on me, rich people can't get it, so what do you think they're doing?
Yeah.
They're buying up what they can get.
Yeah, which is going to cause a spike in premium, so it's going to be hard for those that are of lesser means to actually acquire themselves. So, yeah.
That is true. And the COMEX is only going to be working so long. The reason you don't see China calling out the U.S. or Russia calling out the U.S. on that issue is because they're letting them manipulate it along with the bankers who are buying it up pennies on a dollar. They're giving you, the average Joe, a gift right now. A gift horse right now in the mouth. Because it's cheap and you can get it. But the day that is over, you're going to see gold skyrocket because they're manipulating the market due to COMEX, which is really only paper contracts. No gold or silver changes hands.
Yeah.
They're using that Ponzi scheme to keep the price of gold and silver down. They've been doing that since 1970, financial collapse.
Since 1974 is when that whole COMEX, paper stuff came into existence. So, hey man, I appreciate you sharing your knowledge, man. A lot of people in the chat saying you're right on. So you're doing a good job, my friend. Thank you for sharing that. That's definitely some love right there, dog.
No problem, bro. I love the show, man.
Thank you, sir. You have a good night, boss. Appreciate you.
All right.
Yeah, man, that's a wealth of knowledge right there. Thank you for calling and sharing those thoughts, man. That's truth right there. That's truth summed up in a very concise manner there. Thank you. So as always, we're going to draw towards the end. It's been a good evening. We're back at it again tomorrow night, 9:30-ish. As always, invite a friend, tell someone to join us. Let's try to get this thing a little bit stronger so that we can, have more people tune in, man. The biggest thing is, help more people wake up to the truth. The truth is that everything you've been told, everything you've been told. Everything you've been told, I want to say it has been a damn lie. So I'm gonna stick with that. For the night. Let me know in the comment section. Would you say that's true? Everything you've been told has not been the entire truth. So help them, God. Help them, God. Yeah, however that goes. But everybody have a good night. Appreciate you guys tuning in. As always, got a couple of things here on my shoulder here. Keep a note of. Make sure you guys on Facebook. Join me on Facebook. Let's connect there. If you come across any articles during the day, feel free to send it to me direct message via Twitter, email, or whatever. I would love to report on it. And then we got one more caller, so I'll take this call. Hello, caller. What's your name? Where you calling from?
Hey, Mike. This is Mark Ward. How's it going?
I'm doing excellent, my friend. Thanks for calling in. Where you calling in from?
I'm calling from Northern California.
Northern California. What's going on in your mind? What's on your mind tonight?
Yeah, well, I got some disagreements with some of the previous callers, but I got some insight to provide you as well. So, my background, I'm a data scientist. I graduated from the Air Force Academy in 2008.
Okay.
And in 2013, I was studying operations research, and I solved an artificial neural network that was able to predict the NASDAQ 100 futures market at 88% accuracy over 4,000 times per day.
Okay.
I thought I was going to be rich, right? But I wasn't a market maker, so when I tried to trade the ticks, I was just predicting the next tick. I wasn't able to capture that 25-cent ticks in the value futures market. So I ended up getting out. I was actually in the Air Force Academy pipeline to teach math at the Air Force Academy. So due to sequestration, I left the Air Force and went into the corporate world. I was a data scientist at Sports Authority, and then I was forecasting company sales, and I realized that they were going bankrupt because of their debt load. And so I left that, and then I actually got picked up to be a consultant data scientist, and my job was I was in charge of 6 other data scientists, and we were tasked by the Chief Risk Office at USAA. You've heard of USAA, Mike?
USAA. No, fill me in.
Okay, so USAA is a major military focus with 10 million members, banking and insurance company. They have $50 billion under assets, or Federal Reserve notes, digital dollars, And so we were tapped because they were growing, and they hold such an important key as far as the military. All the military members and officers are enlisted USA members, that they were going up to Federal Reserve and Office of Comptroller Currency Review. And so I was leading a team that was in charge of reviewing all of their models. So we read over 14 months. In 2016, read basically all 330 models that ran their entire business. And over that time, I started picking up on your channel and whatnot. But what I realized was that, the entire Federal Reserve system is based upon psychology of humans. And it's really the going concern of the unit of currency that we use. So, as you know, just to review real quick, we really work with the Federal Reserve note is debt currency, right? Because it's loaned into existence and owed back plus interest. But mathematically, that means that it's growing. The number of units are growing at an exponential rate. And so they're going exponential, and so countably infinite is where we're headed to how many Federal Reserve notes are in existence. Now, most of those are digital, as you mentioned earlier in your broadcast. So basically, now, if you look at if you look at mathematically, if you take the limit as time goes to 0, how many IOUs, which are only good for IOUs, which is debt currency, how many debt currency units can acquire energy, which is, silver, gold, chicken, gas, energy that we use, or time, human time. If you think the limit of time goes to 0, you remove all assumptions on future behavior. So if we remove all assumptions on future behavior, an IOU, which is only good for an IOU, which is only good for an IOU, repeating, has no reason to exist in the moment. And therefore, that equation would never converge, it would always diverge. Does that make sense?
So go ahead. I'm getting you. I'm hanging on there. I'm trying to process this as you go through all that. So go ahead.
Yeah. So basically, the Federal Reserve note only has purchasing power today because we assume it will have purchasing power tomorrow, right? And then basically we have to convince ourselves and everyone around us, you, me, everyone we talk to, and even the worst part about it is our children. We have to convince our children that it will have purchasing power in the future. That way they think that it has purchasing power in the future. So it's basically this big, in the military we call it psychological operation, a big psyop to trick everybody. And then so, as I said, in the moment, you should never exchange, as you said earlier, you would never go and sell your silver because that's just illogical, right? Mathematically, you are correct. In the moment, you should never exchange your silver, and silver and gold transport energy through time, whereas debt currency, it really pulls energy from the future to consume today. So the two should never meet in the moment and be converted for one another, changed hands. Now, so to get back to the model I solved in Nasdaq 100 futures market, my opinion now, after watching the silver and gold market, is that the prices are not determined by traders in the moment. The prices are announced to us via the CME group / comments.
Right.
So, the price of gold at any one time, we say the price because everything we denominate in this table in front of me, the microphone in front of you, we have this fictitious unit of account called debt currency, which is infinite in supply, but we still calculate the exchange cost that we purchase it for, the potential exchange cost that we could then go acquire other, the currency, the other goods and services that we might need for our lives, the energy, the food that we might need to consume tomorrow. And so this silver, this gold, the prices are announced to us. So gold at what, 1,300, whatever it's at today, via the CME group, those prices are operated by computers. Right. And so if you, I don't know if you watch the Futures radio show, there's an episode 150 last year.
I did not.
A CEO, Chris Haymeyer, was on it. And he, at the end of it, he said, at minute 31, episode 150, he said that people should get into computers because computers are operating the activity. So he kind of let it slip at the end of that radio show, on Futures radio show, episode 150. But essentially, that's why silver is 80 times less valuable than gold, because psychologically we think, and it's more volatile. So psychologically we think that silver is less valuable than gold because we go through this medium of exchange that everyone calls the dollar, which is really the Federal Reserve notes. And the banks can loan those into existence to infinity, and who knows how many digital debt dollars the Federal Reserve has loaned into existence to international, and every government is essentially a corporation. And then they have these other corporations like Apple and Samsung that are willing to sell you goods and services for the debt currency because they value themselves in debt currency, and that's how they value their company, is in how many debt currency units they acquire in a year, or the potential to acquire in the future. And so it's really this hoax going on. It's like a big Bernie Madoff hoax going on. And so to transition, so I've also looked into cryptocurrency as well. I think that Bitcoin, as the leader, is really a transition from a debt-based system to a let's call it a non-debt-based system, right? Because
when you say non-based, and so it came out of nowhere, but originated from somewhere. And so it's good to say that it's man's design that's been implemented as a libertarian, free us from central control type of used as a currency.
So central control, that's interesting, because who tells you the exchange rate of the current price of Bitcoin?
It's told to us in dollar terms. So exchanges,
but also by Coinbase, essentially, as the biggest. So get this. So from my opinion, this is interesting because cryptocurrencies, there can be an infinite number of cryptocurrencies, but technically, if they're decentralized, then any one cryptocurrency should be finite in the number of units, right?
Right.
On the other hand, central banks, there can only be a limited number of central banks because each central bank is through a government, or a corporation, right? A region in the world. But however, they can create an infinite number of digits. So they're kind of the same side to the two sides of the same coin, so to speak. One's infinite in supply but limited in numbers, whereas the other is infinite in numbers but limited in supply. Okay.
I like that.
So let me talk to you about the Bitcoin cycle. Can I walk you through the Bitcoin cycle?
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. So if you go on Coinbase, on your Coinbase app, and you go to BTC All, you'll see that the number if you have the most current Apple app, the most updated app, the smallest number on Bitcoin all will be $13.33, $13.33, 13 Federal Reserve notes, debt dollars and 33 cents. And the farthest left you will be able to scroll is January 31st, 13. So 1/31/13. Okay, now I'm sure you've heard of Mount Gox, right?
Yeah.
So do you know what day that Mount Gox peaked at?
I do not. No.
Okay, so that would be the 333rd day of the year, November 29th, 2013. And if you go on Coinbase, the price that they'll tell you is 1,108 Federal Reserve notes and 80 cents. So 11,088.80. Okay, now if you go, then it dropped after that, right? And so do you know the next time it crossed 1,000?
I do not know. I can pull it up.
Okay, so that was 3 years, 33 days later on January 1st, 2017.
Okay.
So on the 333rd day of the year in 2013, it peaked. Then 3 years, 33 days later, it crossed 1,000 for the first time. Now, it dropped below that, and then it came back up. And then, do you know the day it crossed 10,000?
Day it crossed 10,000 was this last year. I don't know the exact day, but go ahead and give it to me.
Yeah. So it was in the evening. I was in Pacific time. It was in the evening at 6:30 on November 28th. Now, GDAX, now it's Coinbase Pro or whatever, operates on UTC time. So technically that was 0:30 UTC time. So it was actually November 29th, at 30 minutes into the day, it crossed 10,000. Coinbase announced that it crossed 10,000.
Okay.
So that was, again, 333 days after it crossed 1,000, it crossed 10,000, right? And then it went up to 19,000, and then it's back down to, 6,000. But if you look at the cycle from November 29th and you go 3 months, 33 days later, you have April 1st. Now, we had a big drop on April 1st, down to about 6,100. If you go 3 weeks, 33 days before April 1st, you end up on February 6th. And you had a drop, I think you had a drop down to 6,000. If you go to tradingview.com, they'll tell you it was 6,000 on that day. The lowest drop on February 6th. And so I don't know if you remember, but there was a big drop down to 1,700 on the 16th of July in 2017. And then 333 days later was June 13th, and we had another drop on that day. And then 13 days later was June 29th, and my opinion is that's the last low of Bitcoin we'll see. And so based upon this pattern, this cycle, the Bitcoin cycle, I'm calling it, I'm predicting we see on Coinbase 100,000 Federal Reserve notes per Bitcoin on October 28th, 2018.
Woo, baby. Okay, so that's
yeah.
Okay, because right now as you're speaking all that, I'm going. I got the CoinDesk up, so I'm going through as you were calling out dates. I'm going back and I'm seeing the dips and whatnot. So you're saying that based upon your calculations and your mathematician skills, you've kind of put the idea that this upcoming October, as you say, is going to be 100,000 pieces of paper for one digital algorithm.
Well, it's not paper, right? It's digital debt.
Digital debt units.
Yeah.
Per one.
Which are infinite in supply, right?
Yeah. For one Bitcoin.
So yeah, that's and it's based upon a cycle, a pattern recognition of the cycle of Bitcoin. As I said, January until, November 29th, 2013 was the peak at Mount Gox, which is the 333rd day of the year. 3 years, 33 days later, it crosses 1,000. 333 days later, it crosses 10,000. And from that point, then 3 months, 33 days later, it had a drop on 1st of April, and then 3 weeks, 33 days before that, it had a bigger drop on 6th February. And so I'm actually, from now until October, I think they're going to ramp it up about 3 times and, crash it every time. Because if we take a step back and look at what they're doing, if we were to take if we were to go 200 years in the future and look back at ourselves right now, what's really happening, right? We're so caught up in the moment, and we have the emotions driving us. But if we were to take a look 200 years in the future and look back at us, what is really happening is in my opinion, they're transferring systems right now. And we just don't see it because we're living day to day.
Right.
But we're switching from a debt-based system to a a cryptocurrency, which the cryptocurrencies are infinite in supply but limited in space for each one. And so we're moving systems, and of course, the real kicker is going to be how to, that's kind of what I'm trying to do is disrupt the Federal Reserve, because I think it's an insurrection. I can prove it as well, an insurrection against the Constitution. And I don't know if you read the 14th Amendment, Section 4, but if you read the 14th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, which is kind of our social agreement, read the 14th Amendment, Section 4, which was passed in the late 1860s, which is basically any debt owed to an insurrection is void and illegal to pay back. And so if we can prove that the Federal Reserve is an insurrection against the Constitution itself, then all debt owed to the Federal Reserve, so all Federal Reserve notes will be void and illegal to pay back. Right? So I would say the owners of the Federal Reserve know that, and they know that's coming, so they're trying to capture as much energy in that transition, and that's why we have Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash, and as I said, there's going to be infinite number of protocols out there.
So let me ask you,
that's my opinion.
So now that's real talk, man. I appreciate you sharing your analysis and your mathematician skills with us, because that's some interesting stuff. Definitely, like because there's a lot of. I mean, I imagine you follow a lot of the gentlemen out there in the Bitcoin space and crypto space in general. So there's been a lot of forecasts saying that come this end of this year time frame, there's a lot of predominantly Cliff High saying that there's a lot of whatever he call his bots or whatever, picking up a lot of language, however he does whatever he do, saying that there's a lot of tonality in whatever he putting together out there, saying $100,000 type of parties and all that stuff. So it's just interesting. So I'm assuming you're aware of that now. But prior to hearing about that from whoever you may follow also in the multimedia space, did you have those same type of figures as well, to where that could have been those figures could have been swayed by listening to Cliff High reports and being a follower of him as well, probably?
Oh yeah, no doubt about it. I do follow Cliff High, so he could be influencing my prediction of 100K. But if you look at the cycle of Bitcoin, how they're ramping the price up and then dropping it down, he calls it the crocodile teeth, right? That's kind of what leads me to the 10 time in 333 days. Have you heard of Gematria, Mike?
I have not, no.
Okay, so Gematria is basically the practice of encoding numbers into letters, which make up words and phrases.
Okay.
And basically, every Federal Reserve note encodes Gematria for you. If you pull out all your Federal Reserve notes and lay them on a table, every one is printed by one of the 12 Federal Reserve banks, right? So, I think New York is A, and so they have a number 1 next to A. So like number 1, A is 1, B is 2, C is 3. That's like the most basic cipher.
Yeah. Okay, I've seen those.
D is 26.
Yeah.
So that's the most basic cipher. It's kind of encoding. And so if you were to say, well, if I say bat is B-A-T, that's 2 plus 1 plus 3, right, which would be 6. And then the theory is that the numbers with the same value are kind of related. So any other value that has a 6 as its summation of Gematria values would be related to each other. And if you looked it up, it's basically a Kabbalistic, so Jewish mysticism, which believes that God created the world by merging the letter with the number. So here's the ironic thing, is that when you look at the Gematria of Bitcoin, it equals 72, and you look at the Gematria of money, it equals 72. So anytime we see Bitcoin, our brains, which don't pick up letters and words, our brains pick up numbers and frequencies. So our brains correlate Bitcoin to be money without us even thinking about it, because it has the same Gematria value. In my opinion, that's how it's working.
Yeah, interesting.
So I've never heard Cliff High talk about Gematria, but I think that's a key to the puzzle, because Bitcoins with an S is 303, and an English extended Gematria Bitcoin is 333. So there's your 333, and there's your cycle of 333s everywhere. I kind of walked you through the price announcements.
Yeah.
And so other people talk about Gematria. I'm the one trying to correlate Gematria into Bitcoin cryptocurrency. And there's a great guy called Zach Hubbard, and he wrote a book about kind of how the entire Federal Reserve and the government is operated basically by the Masons, and they operate this code, which is evident in newscasts.
Mm-hmm.
Everything the mainstream media does encodes Gematria in it, which influences our minds to continue for us to give up our lives, our energy, our children, and our desires for the Federal Reserve note, essentially.
Yeah. Interesting. Well, I Zach, I wasn't familiar of Gematria. I pulled up Zachary Hubbard, so I've definitely learned something, my friend. So I thank you for calling and sharing that. And so, question is, do you blog or write anywhere? Because I would love, because you spilled out a lot of information there. I would love to look over it and decipher it myself, just because a lot of knowledge would seem like it was put into that. So, do you blog or write anywhere?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter. I can
definitely cool. Connect with me on Twitter.
MARC. Yeah, I'll hit you up on Twitter right after this, and just to say hi.
Good deal. Sounds good.
And so yep.
Well, I appreciate you, my friend. Thanks for the knowledge, and definitely look forward to connecting on Twitter with you and going back and forth there. So thank you for calling in and sharing that with us.
Hey, Mike, sounds good. Appreciate it. Have a good one.
Enjoy your night.
Bye.
Interesting. That was very interesting. I can say I learned a lot right there. A lot of stuff numbers and gematria, and that's some interesting stuff there. Interesting stuff there. But I appreciate you guys chiming in. Went a little longer than expected, but once again, didn't want it to reject a call before I got up out of here. So everybody, thanks for calling in. Thanks for chiming in the chat. Appreciate you guys sharing your thoughts. I see a couple people there interested in numbers and digits now. Past 72 is the number of star systems that are visible from the Earth. There were 72 worship comes from. 27 is the number of satanic repair. Whoa, okay. 27 minus 9. 9 means destruction. 27 greater than equal to 9. Okay, so we get into very numerology and numeristic out here. So I'm gonna leave that as is, because I don't really know much about that. That's not my thing thus far. But everybody, appreciate you guys chiming in. Let's talk again tomorrow night, 9:30ish. As always, invite a friend, get a video a thumbs up, share this so more people can join in with us. And other than that, appreciate you guys tuning in. Enjoy your evening.